Imagine walking down a British high street about 10 years ago. It didn't matter which city you were in, the visual landscape was exactly the same. You couldn't go 5 minutes without seeing a very specific, very bold aesthetic. Japanese kanji characters, vintage Americana fonts, and high-quality, heavyweight fabrics. It was the unofficial uniform of an entire generation. A brand that managed to be worn by everyone from David Beckham to Idris Elba, and probably half the people you went to school with. It was a juggernaut that seemed to print money, expanding aggressively across the globe while its stock price climbed higher and higher, turning its founders into fixtures on the rich list. But if you look for that invincible empire today, the picture is radically different. The cool factor evaporated, the stock value was decimated, and the man who built it all was forced to stand in front of the world and admit that running his own publicly traded company had become a nightmare. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the chaotic, high-stakes, and absolutely fascinating near-death experience of Superdry. Leading up to 2024, the numbers were catastrophic. In the first half of the 2024 financial year alone, the group's revenue plummeted by a staggering 23.5% compared to the previous year. If you dig into the specifics, it gets even rougher because the wholesale division, traditionally a massive cash cow for brands like this, crashed by 41.1%. That is a monumental hit to the bottom line, resulting in an adjusted loss before tax of £25.3 million. So, what on earth happened? If you read the company's internal reports, they point the finger at a very specific, uncontrollable enemy, the weather. You'll see the phrase remarkably unseasonal weather pop up repeatedly in their documents. It turns out that when you build an empire on selling high-quality heavyweight jackets and coats, a warm autumn is basically kryptonite. The company explicitly stated that the lack of cold weather delayed consumers from buying their winter gear, which is the absolute bread and butter of Superdry's revenue stream. They were stuck with warehouses full of parka coats while everyone outside was still wearing t-shirts. But the sun shining was only part of the problem. The company was also battling a massive cost of living crisis that tightened wallets across the UK and Europe. When people have less disposable income, premium hoodies are often the first luxury to be cut from the budget. However, blaming the weather is the oldest trick in the retail book, and the problems here went deeper than just the temperature. The company was bleeding cash. Their net debt situation was precarious, hovering around £28.9 million, and they were forced to scramble for liquidity. They had to clear out old stock at discount prices just to generate cash, a move that hurts gross margins and damages the brand's premium image in the long run. You can see the desperation in the inventory numbers. They managed to reduce inventory by 24.2%, but that was largely driven by a clearance mindset to free up working capital. Every good comeback story needs a villain, and for Superdry's CEO Julian Dunkerton, that villain is fast fashion, specifically the Chinese giant Shein. Dunkerton has been incredibly vocal in the press, slamming Shein as a tax avoider and accusing them of exploiting a loophole that gives them an unfair advantage over British companies. His argument centers on the UK's de minimis threshold, a rule that allows packages valued under £135 to enter the country without incurring import duties. The implications of this are massive. Superdry is a British company paying full taxes, business rates, and overheads for its physical stores and UK operations. Meanwhile, they are competing against a giant that can ship individual parcels directly to customers tax-free because they fall under that £135 limit. Dunkerton argues this rule was never intended for billion-pound mega corporations sending millions of packages. It was meant for small gifts and minor transfers. He has gone on record stating that the UK is allowing somebody to come in and be a tax avoider. He didn't mince words, calling Shein an environmental disaster and warning that unless this loophole is closed, we're going to see more UK bankruptcies. This narrative is crucial for Superdry's rebranding. By picking a fight with Shein, Dunkerton is positioning Superdry as the ethical quality alternative. It creates a powerful David versus Goliath conflict where Superdry isn't failing because its designs are old, but because the playing field is tilted against them. It's a smart PR move that rallies support for a heritage British brand fighting against a tax-dodging foreign behemoth. While the tax war made for good headlines, it wasn't going to pay the immediate bills. By early 2024, the situation had become critical. The company released a restructuring circular that explicitly stated that the company would likely enter administration or an equivalent insolvency process immediately. To avoid this fate, they launched a massive restructuring plan. The plan involved forcing rent reductions on 39 UK sites to bring their fixed costs down to a sustainable level. They effectively went to their landlords and said, cut the rent or we go bust and you get nothing. Alongside the rent cuts, they needed cash fast. This is where Julian Dunkerton put his money where his mouth is. He personally underwrote an equity raise to save the ship. It is a rare and dramatic move for a CEO to personally guarantee the funding needed to keep the company afloat, but it signaled his absolute, unwavering commitment to the brand he founded. The plan was designed to deliver over £40 million in savings within the financial year, a target they actually claimed to be ahead of by the half-year mark. They slashed selling and distribution costs by over 20% and cut central costs by 22%, proving to the market that they were serious about right-sizing the business to fit its new, smaller reality. This brings us to the most dramatic plot twist of the entire saga. On July 15th, 2024, Superdry officially waved goodbye to the London Stock Exchange. For years, being a public company was seen as the ultimate mark of success, a badge of honor for a global brand. But for Dunkerton, it had become a shackle. In a candid interview, he described the delisting as a moment of pure relief, bluntly saying, "Thank God," and comparing the experience of being on the stock exchange to being in prison. Being a public company is expensive and exhausting. You have to report every quarter. You are obsessed with short-term stock prices. And you have analysts breathing down your neck every time sales dip. By going private, they could save significant costs associated with being listed and, more importantly, execute their turnaround without the daily pressure of a ticking share price. But you can't save a fashion brand with spreadsheets alone. You need clothes people actually want to wear. This is where the rebirth comes in. Julian Dunkerton insists that through this crisis, they have rediscovered who they are. The new strategy is a hard pivot back to their roots, but with a refined, modern twist. They're relaunching with a new logo, a new store design, and a renewed focus on an American vintage style mixed with that classic British flair. The goal is to move away from the loud, logo-heavy branding that saturated the market in the 2010s and move towards something more refined and sustainable. Dunkerton claims that preppy style is back, noting that while it used to be loved by 50-year-olds, it's now being embraced by 18-year-olds too. This multi-generational approach is the linchpin of their new marketing strategy. They are explicitly targeting different demographics on different platforms. TikTok for the Gen Z consumers who want that vintage aesthetic, and Instagram for the more mature audience who want quality staples. They already have around 800,000 followers on TikTok, which suggests they might actually have a shot at making this pivot work. The new collection, SD Co by Superdry, features Oxford shirts in pastel colors, rugby shirts, and military-inspired field jackets that are less about shouting the brand name and more about the quality of the fabric. Superdry's story is the perfect case study of the boom and bust cycle of fashion retail. They flew too close to the sun, saturated the market, and got hammered by a changing economy and ruthless competitors. But unlike many others who just fade into administration, Superdry slashed costs, escaped the prison of the stock market, and are betting everything on a premium, preppy reinvention. But what do you reckon? Can Julian Dunkerton really make the brand cool again? Or is the Superdry name just too synonymous with 2010s nostalgia to ever truly bounce back? Drop your thoughts in the comments, especially if you still have one of those jackets with the 3 separate zips hanging in the back of your wardrobe. And if you enjoyed the video, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell so you don't miss any more proper deep dives like this one. Cheers for watching, and we'll catch you next time.